welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Garth Neufeld, along with Eric Landrum, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the and stuff. This is episode number 91, where Eric had the opportunity to interview Keli Braitman from William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri. But before we get to that, Psych Sessions is now supported by STP. That's the Society for the Teaching of Psychology, APA Division II, or our teaching tribe. I want to quickly mention some upcoming dates and deadlines and things that you should be aware of. First of all, please visit teachpsych.org for new resources that are available, along with the current issue of STP News, which comes out monthly. You can also find candidate statements for those running for STP offices there, and that election is coming up soon. The deadline for proposals for STP's annual conference on teaching has been extended to May 1st. ACT will be held October 8th through 10th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we want to invite you to contribute to Ask Psych Sessions. This is your chance to ask a question about the teaching of psychology. Could be a big picture question or a nuts and bolt question. And Marianne Lloyd, who is heading up this program by Psych Sessions, will get someone to answer it, and we will post the questions and answers as Ask Psych Sessions episodes on bi-weekly Tuesdays. Go to bit.ly/Ask Psych Sessions to post your questions. That's bit.ly/Ask Psych Sessions, all one word, lowercase. Please send us your questions. And if you didn't see, we just rolled out a 10-episode mini-series on online teaching that we are calling Online Ask Psych Sessions. This is a great resource for educators who are brand new to online teaching. Check it out. Finally, if you haven't yet had an opportunity to rate us on iTunes, we invite you to leave a rating there, as it helps us pop as people are searching for psychology or teaching-related content, and it will help us get Psych Sessions out to more teachers of psychology. Now, before you hear the interview with Keli Braitman, please allow me to share some listening tips and some of my favorite moments. Eric and Keli had the opportunity to catch up at the meeting for the Association of Heads of Departments of Psychology, which takes place every fall. And if you are a department head or a department chair, I want to encourage you to check out that meeting. I was able to go to that meeting a couple of years ago, and it is really a wonderful group of people who talk about some really important things that only department heads and department chairs really truly understand. So make an effort to get to that meeting. I do believe they have a Facebook page that you can connect with them on. Keli Braitman from William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri. What a great interview and conversation that Eric and Keli had. My introduction to Keli has just been through STP, and I don't know her very well, so I was shocked to hear how well Eric knows her. It really hasn't come up in conversations. So I had a lot of fun just listening to how far these two go back. It's really, really neat how they have crossed paths on a number of occasions throughout the years. Right now, Keli is the Vice President of Grants and Awards for the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. And so if you've seen her name around, it might be there. She is a really interesting individual. She has a lot of different career experiences, which they will get into. For example, she starts out with an undergraduate degree in psychology and goes on and gets a PhD in psychology, and then eventually takes on jobs as, let's see if I can do this, as an assessment coordinator in higher education, also as a professor of psychology, I think in 2 different stints, one of which is currently, maybe 3 different stints actually, I'm not quite sure. She worked for Highway Safety as a research analyst and was either offered or took the job of vice president of research for that organization. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. I wasn't clear whether she took the job, but I do believe she said that she saw the person who had the job before her, and it didn't look like it was a great quality of life. And so let me pop back to some themes that come through this conversation between Eric and Keli, because I saw these really, or heard these really strong themes of family, career, and salary or money. And that, like so many of us, these are the balances that we are always taking into consideration when we make a professional move. What may be good for the career might not be good for the family. And a lot of money does not necessarily mean that there's going to be a lot of satisfaction. And maybe there are these questions that we've all dealt with from time to time if we reflect on our situations when it comes to balancing family and career and salary or money. For example, some of the things that come up in this conversation is, how much money do you give up to find the perfect job or to get the perfect job? How much of a salary cut would you take for that perfect job that really serves family well? Or when do you leave a good job to be closer to family? That comes up in this conversation. How about this one? Keli is married to an assistant professor. And so how does a married couple who are both assistant professors approach getting jobs? That's pretty interesting to think about. And I know a couple of you out there are in this sort of situation, and they talk about what they did. Final question that I thought was kind of interesting was, how do you think about the value of reassignment time? So if you are the head of the department and you get offered reassignment time versus money, what do you do in those situations? Keli definitely has a few thoughts on that, and you'll be interested to hear her discuss it. There's also an interesting theme that goes on in Keli's life between higher education and family that starts with her mom and stepdad. And when she's working in the psychology office as a student worker, coming across some old notes between them. Her stepmom was the director of a master's in counseling program there at the college, and her dad was the dean of graduate admissions. And so she tells the story of how they got together when she was a teenager working in the institution, the same institution where they were both employed. So that's a fun story. A lot of this conversation is chronological. So it starts when Keli is young, and then they actually end talking about her role with STP presently. But a couple times they just get off on these little kind of side teaching conversations, which was really fun. For example, Eric discloses that he once received a C+ on a paper that he thought he did really well on. It turns out he did do really well on it. And that is a story that you don't want to miss, because there is this ethical, this ethical conversation to be had around what his instructor did and how he was trying to motivate Eric. And Keli is motivated not by C+, but by A+. And so they talk about how instructor grading and instructor communication and just the little things that instructors do along the way can have huge impacts on students, not only their academic lives and future career, but also them as people. And it was profound to hear about how those two experiences affected Eric and Keli and really stuck with them even till today. So you're going to want to listen for that, because it was a pretty interesting conversation. And without further delay, here they are, Keli Braitman with Eric Landrum.
I am here with Keli Braitman. Hi, Keli.
Hi, Eric.
And she is from William Jewell College. I hope I said that correctly with 2 L's.
You did.
And where is William Jewell College?
We are located right outside of Kansas City. So we're in a small town called Liberty, Missouri.
Liberty, Missouri. Mm-hmm. And I've known Keli for a long time, and we'll get to all of that backstory. We went to the same graduate school, but not at the same time. Separated by decades, I'm sure. But we'll get to all of that eventually. So, Keli, why don't you tell folks what you did earlier today here at AHDP? We'll do reverse chronology, perhaps.
Okay. Well, this was my second time attending the meeting,
and
I really wanted to come, but to get funding, I had to give a presentation. I was not one of the keynote speakers.
Neither was I. I just gave a presentation.
You were a keynote.
I wasn't. Actually, Karen Brocky from Spelman College was the keynote.
Oh, I thought there were 2.
No. Oh, no. I have keynoted in the past, let the record reflect, but not this year. Well, thanks for playing, though. I appreciate that.
Sure. Well, Dave Kreiner sent out an email asking people if they had a difficult situation that they could talk about, and I thought, well, that's something I could contribute.
As a department chair, you have faced at least one or more than one difficult situation.
Yeah, but there was one in particular that I wanted to talk about. And I think from the time I attended in the past, it seemed like people often talked about a specific circumstance with a faculty member that they were dealing with. And I didn't have anything that was really specific about a faculty member. Mine was a little bit more broader about becoming a department chair my 3rd year at the college before I had received tenure.
So I was fortunate enough to be in the room for your presentation, and not only those 2 things, but there's a but also it's an incredibly small department as well. So you came in as a new hire, you became department chair without tenure, and what number faculty member were you when you joined the department?
I was the third person in the department. So my colleagues, Pat and Ray, had been operating as a 2-person department with about 100 majors.
So are we using fake names there or real names? Let's just be clear.
Those are real names.
Okay, and that's okay, you think?
Yeah, those are my yeah.
We don't have to change those to protect the innocent?
No, I don't have anything bad to say about them.
Oh, okay. So that first off, that's really nice and refreshing. But secondly, isn't it a little awkward to be hiring someone? So when you were hired, was the ad did the ad say hiring a department chair as assistant professor?
No, and we moved to the Kansas City area I think in 2011 because my husband had a job opportunity.
Okay, and
so I had been hired as an assessment coordinator at Rockhurst University, which is where Mike, my husband, was working as well. And I did not like being in charge of assessment.
I want to circle back to that, but we'll stay on the William Jewell front.
Yeah. So no, it was just a position, but I was really, really excited to have an opportunity to get back into teaching, and it was not for a department chair. It was just for an assistant professor of psychology.
So you applied for the job. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you got it, and upon signing the contract, they said, "Oh, by the way, I mean, how does the chair part come in?"
I got a couple of years just being an assistant professor. So I had been there for 2 years, and I think it was spring of my 2nd year when my department chair, Ray, just said, "Hey, would you be interested in being a department chair? I'm retiring in 3 more years. I don't want to be department chair for the rest of my time there. I'd like to step down." And I talked to the provost about it, and we both think you would be good in this role, and would you consider it?
So there was no thought of him just kind of going for the full 5 years till his retirement and then doing a national search for a chair like many departments do?
No. I think I don't know why they didn't consider that, but no, I don't think we were in a financial position. I think, no, I don't know. I don't know why we didn't go that route.
All right. And so how long have you been department chair?
I became department chair so I was hired in 2012, I guess fall of 2015 maybe. So 15,
you're in the middle of your 5th year then of being chair?
5th or 6th. I might be getting
all
my years
blur.
wrong. Yeah, and I will say I had some supervisory experience because I had been in nonprofit research before I went back into the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had some supervisory experience. I oversaw budget. I helped with hiring decisions. And so I felt like even though that was a very different setting than an academic department, I'd had some of the experience before. And so it didn't feel brand new, but it was definitely a different setting and a different context.
And you're supervising the 2 people who hired you.
Yeah, I mean, that was awkward because Ray had been there for 30 years. Pat had been there for 25 years. I had been there for 2 years. And so, yeah. And I didn't want to step on Pat's toes because, Ray came to me and said, do you want to be chair? And I said, well, what about Pat? And he didn't give me a very thorough explanation. So before I accepted, I went to Pat. And I think she knew that Ray had offered it to me. Mm-hmm. And I just said, I want to check in with you. And
can I just tell you, and this is a theme with you, and this is a compliment, by the way, this is a very class act on your part, that you went to her because you didn't know if someone had talked to her or not. But mm-hmm. rather than assume that someone did or didn't, you just went straight to her and said, hey, this is going on. Are you okay with this? Would you be okay with this? And Keli, I just want to tell you that this is to your credit. This is, I think, a theme in your life that we may not talk about in other areas, but this is to your credit that you do this as an adult. And I'm telling you that not all adults do this. And so this is a good thing.
Well, thank you. I do think, and I knew I was going to work with Pat for a long time, and relationships are important to me. And I wanted to make sure we had a good relationship, and I wouldn't want to take the chair position if it caused friction or if it was going to affect us somehow.
Yeah, it was a really good move. But so how is it a term that is renewable? Do you serve at the pleasure of the dean? What's the gig?
Yeah, well, and so we're so small, we don't have a dean. Department chairs report directly to the provost.
Oh my.
So we serve at the discretion of the provost, and we have department chairs who have been chair for 15 years. It's not a term at our school. It's not a term limit thing. You serve as long as you're doing a good job and want to be serving.
Right. And so I'm going to venture gently into the none of my business department, mm-hmm. and then we can always edit this out. Garth always knows how to do this when we come to these points. What is the remuneration for department chair? Is it a course reduction? Mm-hmm. Is it an extra 10th or 11th month salary? What are all the perks that you get?
The provost told me that there were 3 tiers, and my department was at the bottom tier. And so, and I think it was based on size of the department in terms of number of faculty and what they perceived as the workload. Because if you look at number of majors, I think we would be higher. So I think it must be based on number of faculty. And so she said for me, it would be 1 course release a year and a stipend of $3,000. And I talked to Mike, my husband, about it, and he's an associate dean, and he has a bigger picture of what they do in other places. Mm-hmm. And he said, I think at this point in your life, you're going to value the time more than the money. And so he encouraged me to negotiate for a course release each semester in lieu of the stipend.
Okay.
So that's what I asked for, and the provost gave it to me, and she said, but this will be conditional, and we will revisit this. And it's been 5 or 6 years now, and every time my contract comes out, we've never revisited it. And I think I've reached the point where I couldn't do it if I didn't have a course release each semester, because I wouldn't be effective.
So, but do you really take the course release, or do you find some reason to save the day for the Department of Psychological Science?
I absolutely take the course release.
Okay, so what's the normal course load at your school?
We have 4 credit classes, and so faculty teach 3 4-credit classes a semester.
And so it's a 3-3 load.
A 3-3 load.
So, or 12 credits.
Mm-hmm.
And you teach a 2-2 or 8-8 in credits.
Yeah, and then I teach online over the summer.
But that's totally optional.
Separate, yep.
That's bonus pay for you.
Yes.
And for everybody,
yes.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's not required.
Gotcha. All right, good. So you don't save the day by stepping in to teach an extra course at the last minute because someone couldn't teach it.
No, I've never had to do it, and I don't know if I would do it, to be honest.
You know, that's actually really refreshing because I know people who will do that, and then they end up really kind of twisting their schedule and their lives upside down.
Well, and we didn't talk about this yet, but when we moved to Kansas City, before that we had been living in Northern Virginia, and I had a very different job, and I was on a different kind of trajectory, and I was compensated better. I was compensated differently. And for me, the quality of life had just gotten to be not manageable. And so when we moved to Kansas City, I thought, I want a better quality of life. I want more balance. I really enjoyed teaching. And yes, you're working evenings and you're working weekends, but there's some flexibility with that. And it came with a huge pay cut. And I thought, I'm willing to do that because what I want in my life, it's more than money. I want to like what I'm doing, and I want to have time with my family, and I want to have hobbies and interests. And so I always thought to myself, if this job ever gets to the point where I become miserable because I'm spending all of my time doing it and I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, then I need to make a change.
The Virginia job was with the Safety Institute?
Yeah, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Yes.
Before we go there, I want to come back to the interim year at Rockport. So you were the director. I'm sorry. Yeah. I apologize. I didn't mean to do that. At Rockhurst, the director of assessment for the entire institution.
I wish that was my title. I was the assessment coordinator, and you needed a bachelor's degree to do it.
And you had that.
I did have a bachelor's.
Yeah. And so what was, let's say, I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You didn't say distasteful, so I don't want to say that. What didn't you care for about that position?
I don't know. It's kind of hard now that I've been removed from it for a while. What I liked about it were the hours. It was literally, other than high school, it was the only time in my life where I left at 4:30 and I had nothing else to do. So that was compelling.
Yeah.
But I hadn't been in charge of assessment in any of the faculty positions I had been in, and I was only involved as a relatively new faculty member. So, one, I didn't know enough about it, and I was doing a lot of research and reading, and I was feeling like I was learning more, and I was learning from books what's optimal, and then trying to implement that in different departments. And I think the faculty at Rockhurst didn't know that I had a background in academics. And so, I was saying, this is what we need to do. And I was reviewing assessment reports. And, I would read one from a certain department that wasn't psychology. And the faculty member would say, students, I could tell that they were learning because, they got it. And I could tell that they got it. And then I had to give the feedback that this isn't what assessment is. Right. We need evidence, and we need to reflect on that and to use that information. And people, some of the people I interacted with were just really resistant to it. I had a faculty member, and I forget if it was philosophy or what department it was, but she told me that assessment made her itchy. And I don't know. I don't think I was, I don't think anybody valued that I had been in the classroom, and they just thought that I was this person who was just coming in and telling them what to do, and I didn't really understand what it meant to be a teacher.
Did they even know that you'd been in the classroom? I mean, did they even get a chance to know you? I mean, they might not. I mean, maybe your supervisor didn't do a good job introducing you, or
well, Rockhurst was going through some interesting changes. So I was hired by a wonderful person named Bill Hafley, and he was the vice president for academic affairs, and he was great, but he hired me and then he stepped down. And so,
okay.
So I started July 1, and I reported to the new VPAA was somebody I had known from, he worked with my husband in Virginia. His name was Jeff Breeze. And actually, no, it was a woman named Sharon. She was intermediate. And Sharon did not last at Rockhurst for a very long time. Jeff came after her. So in the year I was there, I was hired by one VPAA and then reported to two different VPAAs. And Sharon had this idea that because I had a doctorate in psychology, I should have an academic home. And so she wanted me to have a home in the psychology department. But that it wasn't really feasible because I think for them, if they created a home for me, they were worried they would have to create a home for, I think, someone in student life also had a PhD in psychology, and would they lose faculty lines, and what would it mean for for their ability to hire in the future? Because I wasn't teaching, so in the end, I think the psychology department appreciated that I had a background, but outside of psychology, it was just really, really difficult.
Well, and it sounds like it was fumbled for no reason of yours. I mean, with 3 handoffs in 1 year, there was no one there to kind of present you as the expert that you were. No one, I mean, they were going to distrust the assessment office because it was a revolving door of leadership.
Yes.
And sadly, they couldn't, this sounds awkward, they couldn't trade on your expertise because you're a seasoned teacher coming with expertise from the classroom. You could have actually made that thing sing with your background, but they blew it because they just didn't have the stability of leadership.
Well, and doing full-time assessment wasn't really what I wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, but they didn't know that. And knowing you could have made it work well. And then you could have stepped away because you didn't want to do it, which is what you did. But they could have benefited from it, and they just kind of blew that opportunity.
Well, I think it's interesting. They've gone in a different direction. So now they have an Office of Institutional Effectiveness that wasn't there before. So I don't know what the job would have turned into if I had stayed. I mean, it was an interesting experience, but it wasn't really where my heart was.
But I mean, but what does that mean? It could be a Office of Institutional Assessment or Office of Institutional Effectiveness. Isn't it just a relabeling of the same people trying to do the same thing?
And I don't know exactly what they're doing in that office now. I think there's some strategic planning and institutional research. So I think it's a mixture of a lot of different things.
And I will bet that the faculty don't know what they're doing either. I suspect.
I don't know. They have a really good. I don't know who I don't know what her title is, but the person that oversees it all is from the math department. And from what I understand, she does it. My husband works with her, and he has a lot of respect. So I think it's good, but it was just not my favorite year professionally.
Well, and you got out of it.
I did.
You got out of it. So I want to go. So you shared with me something earlier this evening before we had that extravagant dinner at that restaurant.
The one that closed at 6.
The one that closed at 6 p.m. in downtown Atlanta. They've got to put the doors. They got to put the locks in the doors. So let's go to the way back. And so you shared with me. Here's where I was going. That you're a podcast listener, and so you listen. So you know that we talk about origin stories a lot. And so let me ask you about yours, if you don't mind. You can go as far back or as much detail as you want to. We often ask people about going to college and their parents, if they went to college or not. Growing up in your house, was the question, will you go to college, or was the question, which college will you go to?
I think the expectations are that we would go to college.
Okay.
My stepmom and my dad both worked at the state university. Okay. And so my dad...
which one, can I ask?
Frostburg State University.
Frostburg. Okay, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, my stepmom was a faculty member in the psychology department. She was a director of their counseling program.
Okay.
Yeah, and I took a class with her. And my dad worked in the registrar's office, and he was associate dean of graduate admission.
Both at Frostburg?
At Frostburg, yes.
So when you took the class from your stepmom, was she your stepmom at the time?
Yeah, so she became my stepmom when I was a teenager.
Okay.
And I was... what is it called? An office assistant, a student worker for the psychology department.
Oh my gosh.
And so one of the things they had me do was I had to file papers that figure out what needed to be shredded. So I was looking through the papers, and I saw memos back and forth between my dad and my stepmom, because she was the director of the Master's in Counseling program, and my dad was the associate dean of graduate admission. So they worked together professionally. And so I had this record of some of their professional interactions before they became a couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought the smile on your face told me that you were going a different direction.
No. It was all above board.
Oh no, I thought maybe there were going to be hearts or little it'd be typed at the time, but then there'd be a little handwritten. We'll see you at home tonight, honey. But you're saying it was before that they were. Actually,
it was before, but
Yeah.
I don't think they worked together that long before. So I'm trying to remember the timeline. My parents had been divorced for a couple of years, and then my dad introduced me to my stepmom, and as his friend.
Right.
And I said, "Are you dating?" And he said, "No, she's just my friend." And then the next week when we came to visit, because we split our time between the two homes, he said, "Anna's my girlfriend." And then I think it was the week after that they told me they were getting married. So it happened really, really quickly.
Well, it happened really, really quickly in your mind. In their minds, it was already happening.
So I was like a 13-year-old, and
Wow.
and I ended up, I kind of had a tumultuous, I don't know, I was a little bit of a wild child. So I was struggling to get along with my stepdad in middle school. So I decided to move in with my dad for 9th grade. And I thought it would be really great because he was single and I could do what I wanted and there were going to be, no rules. And that's when my stepmom came into my life. And high school was a difficult period for us. And I really didn't settle down until my sophomore year in college. And at that point, I think my stepmom had confided in her colleagues, like, what a struggle I was. And so everybody that was my professor, because I was a psych major, knew all about what I was like as a high schooler.
So you went to Frostburg.
I did.
So
yeah.
So did you live at home or did you live in the dorms?
No, I lived in the dorms my first year, and then I lived in apartments after that.
Okay, and so remind me what city Frostburg is in.
It is in Frostburg. It is in Frostburg, Maryland.
Frostburg,
It's a
Maryland.
small town just west of, people probably don't know Maryland very well. Cumberland is a town near it. Hagerstown is a little bit farther east. It's about 2.5 hours from Washington, D.C., west.
So you stayed in your hometown, and pretty much everybody knew you on campus because everybody knew your dad.
Yes, I was Keli Braitman's daughter.
Keli Braitman's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Keli Braitman's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, out of the registrar's office.
Yes, and enrollment.
Out of
Admission,
enrollment,
yeah.
admissions and enrollment. Did that get you perks on campus? Did you get into every closed class you ever wanted to get into?
I don't think so. No.
As an undergraduate, were you in psych-hi? Did you do undergraduate research? What did you do? Did you go to school as a psych major?
So I started in English.
Okay, how did that happen?
I thought I was a good writer.
Okay.
I really like reading. I thought I was good at writing and reading, and I became an English major and took an English class and didn't do very well, and just decided maybe this isn't the right major for me.
Okay, you don't have to disclose what, an A-?
No. Well, it was really frustrating. I think it helped shape what kind of feedback I give as a teacher, because I would get a paper back and it would have a C on it and then nothing else was written on it. So I didn't know what I needed to do better. And then I think I got a second paper with a C on it with no explanation. And then I can't remember if I finished the class or if I dropped the class, but I chose a new major.
We could get that transcript, and we can hunt down that lead.
Figure out if I have a W.
So I'm going to tell a story really quick about Monmouth College,
Yes.
my undergraduate alma mater. I was in a class for speech communication theater arts. I was a double major, and I wrote a paper which I thought was pretty good. I thought they were all good, and I got a C+ on this paper. And I knew the way the course was structured and the points in the syllabus that I couldn't get an A. And okay, whatever. I'm not always going to get an A. That's okay. And so I got the C+, and I worked really hard the rest of the semester. For some reason, I didn't want to let my professors down. I wasn't internally motivated yet. I was externally motivated. And at the end of the semester, I got an A. I earned an A in the class. And I went to my professor, Jim DeYoung, Dr. DeYoung, and I after the semester was over, and this is how nerdy I was. And I said, Dr. DeYoung, I'm sorry, but you must have made a mistake. I calculated my grades when I got the C+ on the midterm paper, and there's no way I could have earned an A in the class. And he said, oh, Eric, you earned an A on that paper. I gave you a C+ because I wanted to see you work hard.
He knew how to motivate you.
Yeah, he knew how to motivate me, but it was really kind of dishonest.
Yeah.
And I've never done that nor will I ever do that strategy with my students.
And that can backfire.
Yeah, because what if I had said, well, I'm not going to use that word, but to heck with you. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just going to blow off the rest of this class. If I can't get an A, I might as well just get a C or a D.
You reacted differently than I did.
But I think back on that and I go, wow, that was a gutsy move on his part to do that to me, and I've never done that to a student.
That's gutsy. I don't know that I wouldn't make that choice.
I wouldn't either.
No.
But bless his heart, he did it, and it was a learning experience for me. But
yeah.
All right, so you're at Frostburg, and if you decide English isn't going to be it, then why psychology? Why not something else?
I was still exploring. I was considering psych and sociology, and I had questions about how they were different, because I think as an undergrad, you don't really know.
Right.
And I think someone explained it to me that if you're interested in sociology, you might study more group behavior. And if you're interested in psych, you study more individual level behavior. And I was like, well, group or individual? It's hard. It kind of feels arbitrary when you're that young. Mm-hmm. And so I chose psych. I took intro psych from Bill Southerly, and okay. I don't think I was a psych major when I had that class, because it was my first semester or my second semester, and I didn't get serious in college until my sophomore year. So that year I was not doing very well, and Bill knew my stepmom, and he called me and I was a student worker in the department,
right?
And he called me in, and his policy was something like. You could retake the tests. If you didn't do well, you could take all the tests at the end of the semester. And I was just planning on getting by in at the end of the semester, just doing everything I needed to do to bring my grade up. But I was not a model student. And he called me into his office and was just basically like, I need you to do better. You're not putting forth effort, and if you continue this way, you're not going to do well in this class. So yeah, my intro psych class was a hot mess.
So it's really interesting to think about. So was the freshman year the classic 18-year-old, I'm party year, I'm living in a dorm kind of thing?
I started rebelling in high school.
Okay.
Around 10th grade, and it went through my freshman year in college.
Okay, so you say that like you've done something terrible. That's just like what most American teenagers do.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty typical.
Yeah, I think I felt like I started a little bit younger than some of my friends did.
So you're an eager beaver. You took a head start.
I guess so. But my sophomore year in college, when everybody else was out partying, I was ready to lock down and study. So
you started early on the partying, but you also started earlier on the getting serious and locking in on your future.
Yeah, and so by my sophomore year, I really started getting into more psych classes and loved it. I took experimental analysis of behavior with Pat Santoro. She was an AP reader for many years, and loved it. We called it Rat Lab. And as the office worker, I went in and cleaned up after the rats and everything, and ended up adopting 2 of them and then giving one to my sister for Christmas. But yeah, I loved it. We had Skinner boxes. I loved the whole thing.
You had Skinner boxes?
Yeah, my senior thesis was with rats.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked at sex differences in peanut finding behavior. I think we were looking at, do they use landmarks, or I forget what I did now, but it was with rats.
So let's flip back to the family. So number of siblings?
Biological brother, biological sister, 3 stepsisters.
Okay, so 5 sibs altogether.
Yes.
In your head, are they? Is it a group of 6, or is it 2 groups?
No, one big group.
One big group. And where are you in the 6?
One of the oldest. So Sarah and I are essentially the same age. We're the 2 oldest. She's a few months older than me.
All right, and then there's 4 younger ones. Mm-hmm. Is there a big gap?
My youngest sister, Abby, is 7 years younger than I am.
That's actually pretty close. Yeah. You're all kind of bunched together age-wise.
Yeah, and Abby, She is also a psychology professor, and she also has a PhD in applied experimental psychology.
Like you do.
Yes.
And we'll get to the location of where you got yours here in a moment. But Abby is, if I remember correctly, at Old Dominion University.
Yes.
Okay, very good. And there's an inside story that we won't tell on the podcast about why I know that. All right. So so you're at Frostburg State, and at what point do you figure out, I like this psychology thing? Did you have any other majors in between English and psychology?
No.
You went straight from English to psychology. How did you figure out, I'm going to go to graduate school?
So I really got hooked in my statistics class is when and it wasn't through the psych department, it was through the math department, but it was a requirement for the major. And the professor asked me if I would tutor for that class. And that was the first time that I really got a sense of what it was like to be a teacher. And that's when I decided I wanted to teach. And then my research methods class hooked me. I loved it. And I remember Chris Marie Baxter was my professor, and she's the one that helped me be aware of Carbondale because one of our alum was a faculty member there. And I still remember the group project we did. I think we were looking at book carrying behavior. Like we did an observational study of book carrying behavior, and we had to write our APA style paper. And I just geeked out over learning all of that. And I don't know why, but and I was really excited about writing the discussion section. And I still remember I'm extrinsically motivated too. And she'd given me a perfect score on the discussion and had written something very encouraging like, this is the only perfect score I've ever given on a discussion. And I think it was that kind of encouragement that just, got me excited.
Isn't it interesting that sometimes the littlest things that an instructor can do can have the biggest difference? Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we don't understand a little comment, a little note, a little track changes thing in a Microsoft Word document. Years later, we can be told by a student, a former student, an alum, that it made all the difference. I think about this a lot, reflecting back.
Yeah, and you never know. Like, Chris Marie passed away. And we remained friends, and so it was interesting to talk to her, but I don't know that she would have even realized that something she'd written on my paper is what motivated me. Of
the hundreds or thousands of things that she wrote on papers, and maybe she wrote that for different people on different assignments. You did a great job, or this is the best thing I've read. This is the best intro I've read in the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. For some students it went, it went in and went out, but for you, that triggered you in a good way.
Isn't it interesting that you gave an example of somebody telling you didn't do well, and that your paper motivated you, and for me it was like, the positive feedback, but you just don't really know what's going to do it for someone.
Yeah, and other podcasts, you're right. We've had people tell stories about where they were told they couldn't do something, mm-hmm. and so some people can get that motivation in a negative experience, and others get it mm-hmm. in a positive experience. Yeah. Sometimes we are role models in a good way, and sometimes we're role models in a negative way. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, so you graduate from Frostburg State. You do it in 4 years, I'm assuming, mm-hmm. or were you the superstar that did it in 3.5, or something like that?
Nope. Average 4 years.
Okay, just a typical 4 years. Are you a first gen student at all? Is that no? Okay, got it. And then how do you decide to go where you go to graduate school?
Well, I really liked college, and I really liked my psych classes, and I went to a job fair my senior year, and I don't think I really knew how to find a job and what you could do with a degree in psychology, and I was floundering. And someone said, "Hey, the Holiday Inn in Frederick is having a job fair."
The Holiday Inn. You mean there wasn't a poster there from the American Psychological Association that could tell you what careers you could be a part of?
If it was, I didn't notice it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I went to one job fair and walked around and didn't like anything I saw, and decided I don't want to do anything with a bachelor's degree in psych, because I was deeply unaware of everything you could do. I would just had very limited understanding of how I could apply my degree. And so I thought, well, better go to grad school. I like school. So, yeah.
Okay, but how did you decide on the place that you went to? So do you remember even how many schools did you apply to?
2 doctoral programs and 1 master's.
And what specialties were they in, if you remember?
Well, and I was trying to decide, I liked my counseling class, so I was trying to decide between more of a research-focused program or counseling program.
Mm-hmm.
And I must have decided experimental. And my research methods professor, Chris Marie Baxter, said, Peggy Stockdale, who and her husband, who graduated from Frostburg State, Peggy's a faculty member at Carbondale, so you should talk to her and learn about that.
Southern Illinois University, Carbondale.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I reached out to her to learn about that program. My stepmom had taught at Kansas State University, and she said, you ought to check that out. So I applied there. And then my stepmom also suggested that I have a backup master's program, and she suggested Hollins College in Virginia. I did everything wrong. Like I applied to 3 programs. I didn't really know how to find them. I just listened to a few people's advice. And so I did get into the master's program, and I got into the program at Carbondale, and I was on the wait list at Kansas State.
Okay. And so you talked about some of the rat research that you did. Were you in psychi at all as an undergrad?
Yeah. I was active in psychi, and I was an officer. I don't remember what position I held.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you go to any undergraduate conferences at all?
We went to EPA in Boston my junior or senior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That had to have been pretty cool. Did you see any do you remember seeing any big speakers, any textbook authors or anything?
I don't remember a whole lot about it. I think it was,
right.
I was young.
You were probably having a good time. You were in the city, some big city on the East Coast.
I do remember we were driving a van, and I was driving with all of the students and the faculty in the van, and I got pulled over. That's what I remember. You
got pulled over. All right. We can probably find some record of that somewhere in some database.
Yeah. No, but coming from a small state university, I felt like Frostburg had a lot of opportunities that I was able to take advantage of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so you end up in Southern Illinois University, Carbondale.
Yeah, you've heard of it.
I have. And so the reason why, this is Kelly's version of giving me a hard time. It's the sweetest thing because she doesn't really know how to give anybody a hard time. I don't think you really do. Have you ever given anybody a hard time?
I don't know. You'll need to ask Mike. I think he thinks I can do that, my husband.
Well, I think there's a different spousal relationship there. Because what year did you graduate with your doctorate from Carbondale?
2001.
2001. Well, about 3 decades earlier, in 1989, I graduated with my PhD from SIU Carbondale. And so that is the first connection that I have between Keli Braitman and myself. We went to the same graduate program, and a couple of faculty members actually survived, I believe, that entire time.
Dr. Ramanaya,
Narella Ramanaya, Jack McKillop.
Did you have Alan Vo?
He was there the whole time, but I did not have him as a professor.
No, Mira was a professor when I was there. Mira Kamaraju.
No, she hadn't gotten there yet. She wasn't there yet. But I have come to know her through STP, obviously. I think Gordon Pitts had probably retired before I had him as a professor, but
he was because I was a TA for him for Psych 101.
Oh, there you go.
And so was Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was on my dissertation committee. He actually gave me a pretty hard time, which I deserved, by the way.
Well, he was tough.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. I was there when he took his sabbatical to write. He wrote a annual review chapter.
Oh.
Which was a really big deal at the time. I'm sure it probably still is. But he took a sabbatical year, I believe, to write his annual review chapter. We recorded probably a very early version of a podcast once. We had a debate in Life Science 2 one afternoon. I think I have a cassette recording of it somewhere. It was just for fun. I can't remember. It was some sort of behaviorism debate. It was awesome.
That sounds wild.
Yeah, it was just for fun. It wasn't serious, but it was probably some sort of nature nurture debate or something like that.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. You know, Bob Radke passed away.
Mira told me that.
Yeah.
And I never had class with him, but he was there when I was.
Yeah, he was my dissertation advisor.
Okay.
And I wish I had connected back with him, but I hadn't in years. So anyway, that's our flashback to Carbondale memories. That won't mean much to about 4 people who listen to this, but it'll be a fun flashback. So you go to Carbondale. You said you graduated 2001, so that probably means you got there in 1997, probably.
I think 96.
96
I
to
took 5 years.
2001. Yeah. Okay, and you get there and you do the applied experimental program.
Yes.
And then you meet some Yahoo while you're there in grad school.
He was. I was a TA for Dr. Rama's. And what was his class? ANOVA, right?
Yeah, he taught
Analysis
the
of variance.
what was it? 506, 500. So Narella Ramanaya was the sweetest, kindest statistics professor who's ever walked the planet, and he was of Indian descent. And I if I talk to him about him too much, I will tear up. He was just the sweetest, kindest man. And he always was reassuring about, you're done competing for graduate school, relax. Now I need you to learn this material.
When he took me under his wing. So I started with because I knew of Peggy Stockdale, and she's an IO psychologist, and that wasn't what I wanted to do, but I knew her, so I did my master's thesis with her. And I ended up being a TA for Rama, and then he took me under his wing, and he said, you're going to do your dissertation with me, and we're going to do research together.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he really helped me. He mentored me a lot. And then the year I was TAing for that class, Mike was a student in the class. So Mike is my husband.
Oh, look at this.
And
so the student becomes the husband.
Well, and I think what appealed to me is that if I needed to check my work, like you do the problems and then you need to see if you did them right, he was the student in the class that I compared my work against to make sure I did it right.
Yeah.
He was very good at that class. And then at the end of the semester, Rama told me that Mike was going to be the TA and that I should give him materials and help him out. And so we met. I think he invited me to a party and we got to know each other. And so we met as a result of that experience.
So Rama was actually the matchmaker in some way.
Yeah, he came to our wedding, and he described Mike and me as I forget what the language is, like the cart and the bull, and he said, I'm the bull that's out front, like moving these different directions, and Mike's the one in the back kind of holding us steady.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I do an imitation of Rama. I'm not going to do it here because it could be heard as offensive, but I do it with love. I remember him. He's in my head. He's in my ear. It's delightful. I will do it after we turn the microphones off. I can do it like I heard him yesterday. It's 35 years ago now for me.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. All right. So the hard part is now you're a dual career couple.
Yes.
And anybody who's been in higher ed knows trying to find a job for 2 assistant professors going on the market at the same time maybe in a big city you have multiple options at 2 separate universities, but in smaller cities, the same school, same department. That is tough.
Well, I know where you were going with this, but I want to back up and say that.
Okay, how Kelly? How could you know where I'm going with this? Are you a mind reader? How would you know where this interview is going?
Well, we're psychology. Have you heard of ESP?
Now that I think about it, you already know that I know about ESP.
So when we were still dating, I had said, Mike and I both knew we wanted to be academics. And at the time, Carbondale was not preparing people in my program to go into academics. They were preparing us to go into applied research.
Right.
And so, I was this weird, and Ramos was supporting me, but everybody else wanted me to go into applied research. And I knew I wanted to teach, and Mike and I both wanted to find jobs together. And I said, the odds of us getting jobs together is going to be really hard. We need to strategize. And he said, Kelly, it's so hard to find a job. I think we just each need to find a job. And I kind of took that as a sign of rejection. And I said, okay, well, I've been offered a lecturer position at Frostburg State University while I do my dissertation, so I'm going to take it. because I felt like I was trying to coordinate with him so we could find jobs together. And the message I was hearing was, we can't find jobs together. We're each going to do our own thing.
Was this before you were married or after you were married?
No, we were dating. And so I took the job in Maryland, and Mike was still in Carbondale. And we stayed together. We didn't break up. And then 6 weeks later, he flew out and he proposed.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So then, and I was at Frostburg finishing my dissertation and teaching. And he finished his PhD in 3.5 years. He is that overachiever. And he went to University of St. Mary for a semester after he was done. And then we were on the job market together.
So I wanted to, okay, so maybe, and I don't really want to make this about him. He can be on the podcast later, whatever. But that's interesting. So you listened to him and you took, okay, we don't really need to be together right now. We better get a job where we can get a job. You found one, you took it, you left.
I did. Well, and
you're out of here.
I was done with all my classes, and I just had to finish my dissertation.
There was no reason for you to hang around.
I needed to make money.
You needed to make money. You needed to bank. And you had a job offer at a place that you knew, people you trusted.
Yep.
And you took it.
I did.
You left, and he came after you.
Yeah.
You were the horse, and he was just trying to hang on to the cart.
I don't think that's the analogy that Rama meant, but
well, you were a driving force.
Yeah.
You were the engine that was going. He was just trying to keep up.
I think maybe I read too much into what he was trying to say. I don't think.
I think maybe you're wrong.
I don't know.
With all due respect.
I don't know. It's hard. It was, 25 years ago? 20 years ago?
Maybe you need to re-envision this in light of current events and, where we are in our careers today.
Yes.
Maybe you need to do that.
I know what you're getting at.
Take a drink. All right. And so you both kind of, I was going to say separate, but you are both in separate places work-wise.
Yeah.
And then you decide to go on the job market together, which had to be a challenge.
We just both applied everywhere, and he got the first job offer. And I'm trying to remember if Boise State was his first. I think it was.
I wouldn't know that end of the story.
So he interviewed at Boise State University.
He did.
And I applied there as well because at the time, Boise State was hiring for 3 positions.
We were indeed.
And so 2 of those were filled. Mike accepted the position, and then Ted, I'm blanking on Ted's last name,
Ted
McDonald.
Yeah, who's still there.
Took the second. And then I don't think I would have gotten the third, but you guys wanted to keep Mike. And so you went back to the applicant pool, and that's when my name suddenly rose to the surface.
I'm not. So I'm going to tell you right now, I honestly don't remember the sequence of events. So I suppose if I went back into the email dirges, I could figure it out. I don't know.
Well, I do know Mike got a job offer. And I felt very appreciative then that I had the opportunity to interview.
But I guarantee that we would never hire someone out of courtesy. I guarantee we would never hire someone out of pity, that we would never hire someone unqualified for our students.
Oh, I believe it.
I guarantee that. The sequence of, if you say we hired Mike first, I'm sure we did. I believe you.
And what's so interesting is, so we moved to Idaho. He flew out to find a house, and he sent me pictures. And I looked at pictures, and I was like, I need to see the toilet. It needs to be a clean toilet. Like, there were certain things that I cared about. And so he showed me pictures, and I think it was like Snowdrop Lane or something like that. It was in the same subdivision you lived in.
Okay.
And we bought our first house. I hadn't even seen it.
Columbia Village,
yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we lived out there. We moved out there the summer before we started teaching, and then we got married in August in Illinois, so we flew back for the wedding.
Wow,
and then flew back and then started teaching.
Yeah, I know that routine. Yeah. Wow.
September 2001, so that was right before 9/11.
Yeah. September 2001, first jobs out of grad school.
Yeah.
So the 2 of you were there for 2 years.
2 years.
Then you bolted.
We did.
You bolted in the dark of night. The U-Haul came. I think you waved goodbye.
Is that how you remember it?
Yeah, you guys are kind of secretive there. You kind of left, bye, Eric. See you later. We're leaving.
It wasn't
Bye.
quite like that in my memory.
It was bye. See you later.
And we did leave, and I think
you got to do what you got to do for your career.
Yeah, well, and it was Boise State was a great place for us career-wise, but I was at that age where I wanted to be close to my family.
That's a really sweet of you to say, and even if it's not true, it's okay.
Yeah.
People have to leave and go places that's better for them, and Boise State is not always going to be the be-all place for everyone at every point in their career. It hasn't always been great for me, even though I've been there for 28 years.
Well, and when we left, we ended up I got a job offer first, and I ended up at Randolph-Macon Women's College,
right,
which was a really good place for me. But Mike ended up 3 hours north of there at Marymount University. So this was our third year of marriage, and we were living in separate apartments, and we saw each other on weekends. And we did that for one academic year. And then I just decided, mainly I hate driving. I hate having to spend my whole weekend driving. And he came down to see me every other weekend, and I went up there every other weekend.
Right.
We were late 20s, and I thought we might want to have kids. And so and I was in Lynchburg, Virginia, and there wasn't much opportunity for him. But he was in Northern Virginia, and there was more opportunity for me. But I didn't want to be at a big research school. And so I ended up leaving teaching for several years and worked in Northern Virginia.
And just one more thing about Boise State. Don't ever feel guilty about leaving there to do bigger, better things. You got the first job, and you do things for your family, or you do things for your future, no matter where you leave. I mean, I was at University of Wisconsin-Platteville for 3 years before I ended up at Boise State for the next 28.
Well, and I really appreciated some of my colleagues. So you helped Mike and I out a lot with helping us learn what it meant to be a good teacher and how to balance research responsibilities, and just everybody needs a mentor when you start out. And I felt like you were a good mentor to both of us. And then starting with Ted, it was nice having, a cohort of 3 of us. And Jamie Goldenberg had started the year before. And so it was a very good first experience.
Yeah, and that's really sweet of you to say. I wasn't milking for compliments.
No, and the students were fantastic.
Yeah.
Some of our favorite students.
So how was industry? I mean, I think one of the advantages, Kelly, that you probably have is that when you go into the classroom, you can talk about the academic side of psychology, but then you can also talk to your students about, well, here's what psychologists can do with a doctoral degree, but in industry. So how was Highway Safety Institute? How was that?
It was interesting. And I'll say, I applied for the wrong reason. I applied because it was down the street from the university where Mike worked, and we could carpool. Which ended up, I didn't carpool with him. I didn't like that. So, but that's why I applied.
That's a whole other story.
It's more, I don't remember what the issue was, but I didn't like carpooling with him. But I ended up really liking working there. It was an interdisciplinary, so I worked with people who had degrees in animal science and biomechanical engineering and statistics and public health and epidemiology, and we were all just doing research together. So it was fun.
But what was the name of the unit? What was the name of the
Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. So it's a nonprofit organization.
So I'm thinking about highway safety. Could that be the reason why you didn't want to commute with your husband? Because maybe there was a lack of highway safety and driving to and from work every day?
It had to do with differences in our talking preferences. I like to chat, and he would be really quiet, and it would piss me off. So,
oh, you know what? That's happened with me and Lisa.
Yeah.
She has trained me to not be a morning chatter.
Oh.
And now if I want to talk with her, she goes, no. I've taught you not to chat. What are you doing? So, yeah.
Well, Mike wasn't that direct about it, but I would say something and I'd be met with silence, and I'd find myself going, "Did you hear me?" And so that wasn't fun. I didn't like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. And so how long were you there?
7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you must have liked it or at least tolerated it.
Yeah. I mean, the first year I just did it. I think you're still figuring it out. and I loved it. And I think being a psychologist, we had the skills that were needed because I got promoted really quickly. So I started out as an analyst, and I advocated for changing the title to research analyst, and I suggested we become research scientists because we're not just analyzing data, we're designing studies. And then a senior research scientist. And the year before I left, I got promoted to vice president of research, which meant I still did my own studies, but I got to oversee other people's work. And I think that they were doing planning for retirements. And so the writing was that I would get promoted to senior vice president. And I looked at what our senior vice president was doing, and I saw the toll it was taking on her life. And I mean, her family was in Connecticut, and she flew home on weekends, and she worked around the clock, and she was sending emails at 2 a.m. And I was like, I like this work, but I was like in my early 30s, and Addison was, 2 years old at the time. And I was like, this is just not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I mean, maybe if I were older and Addison was done with school, it would be different. But at that stage in my life, that was not what I wanted.
With all of those title changes, those weren't just title changes. Were those also salary bumps as well?
They were.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times in industry, we associate a title change with a substitute for a salary bump. So it's good to hear that those were actually salary bumps as well as a title change.
I made really good money doing that work, but and every single job I've taken since then has paid less money. So, the assessment coordinator made half of what I made in Virginia, right, and the faculty member made even less than that. But I'm not making my choices for salary reasons. I realize that that's not the most important thing.
I don't think anybody in higher ed is making that choice for salary.
I don't think we could be. Yeah.
I think the people at Stanford and Princeton and Harvard probably complain as much about their salaries as we do at William Jewell and Boise State.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody feels underpaid and probably undervalued in higher ed.
Well, and I think that your day-to-day life is what, for me, that's what brings me the most, that's what impacts my happiness level the most.
Right.
And what I'm earning does not really affect my day-to-day life. It might affect, I don't know how much money I'm saving or whether I can afford somebody to help me clean the house or not. But in terms of how I spend my time and how much time I have with my family and those kinds of things, I just realized early on that that's way more important.
Well, and I think that's what keeps most academics in higher ed.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, with my 2 kids, I was able to be at most plays, at most recitals, at most after-school events when they were in sports. I occasionally missed it for a conference I was away at. I didn't miss too many parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah.
I didn't miss too many of those events because I was writing a report or I had to have a mandatory office meeting. For the most part, we have control of our lives.
Yeah.
Most of the evenings and the afternoons where those things happen at schools.
And everybody told me, and I think they're right, that those years with your kids go by so fast.
They do. So you have a daughter, Addison, and she is 11?
She's 11. She's in 6th grade. She just started middle school.
Yeah. So, when I talk to people about this, you blink and you're at high school graduation. Yeah. You blink again, you're at a college graduation.
Well, when we moved to Kansas City, she was 3, and so she's 11. And it went by really fast.
Yeah. I mean, the 2 of you will listen to this, in the future, and you'll go, oh my gosh, it's your high school graduation. Remember when I did this podcast? You were only 11. I can't believe you were 11 back then.
When we were talking at dinner that when you and I worked together, your daughter was in middle school. She was 10 and 11, and now she's, working in Denver.
Yeah, she's working in Denver. She's 28 years old. She's relatively independent. I mean,
she was playing with dolls when I knew her.
She was playing with dolls. I mean, exactly. And so, Addison's got a dog and a foster dog at home trying to navigate that, and a cat, and Dad's taking care of her. Who knows what the hell they're doing tonight?
Who knows?
They're probably having Chinese food, walking around the house in their bare feet. You don't know what they're doing
They're going
at home.
crazy.
They got Netflix on, multiple TVs in the house. They're just doing
They're probably
whatever.
each on separate devices, and he's probably made her mac and cheese.
Do you think they're texting back and forth to one another rather than talking to each other?
That happens.
Does that happen in the house?
Yeah.
Yep.
She sent me the cutest text today. She's not usually funny over text, but I was sitting in our conference, and I got a text from her. She let us know she was on the bus, and then she wrote something like, oh God, I'm not going to remember it now. But it was like, she spelled out home, like, I'm an H, I'm an O, I'm an M, I'm an E, I'm home. It's just, it was the most engaging interaction I've had with her in quite a while because she's a middle schooler. So,
well, that she's communicating is, congratulations, Mom. Thanks. Is awesome. That is awesome. All right. So I've just about taken almost a complete hour of your time. So is there anything that, you thought, oh my gosh, I thought Eric was going to ask me this. I wanted to mention this on the podcast.
No, because I didn't know until about a few hours ago that we were going to do this.
I know that's the kind of the ambush mode, but I kind of like to figure out, is there going to be a space? And I would have given you more notice.
Oh no, this was really fun.
But
I appreciated it.
And sometimes people don't want to stay up late, or you don't know how late you're going to go, and you blew off the big dinners with all bunches of important people just to hang out with me and then to have dinner together. I appreciate that.
Well, I enjoyed our Chick-fil-A.
Hey, you gave it up. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing at STP. You're involved in this thing called the Society for the Teaching of Psychology.
Yes.
Would you tell our listeners a little bit about the role that you're playing in that organization?
So I'm serving as the title just changed, Vice President of Grants and Awards.
Grants and Awards.
Grants and Awards.
It used to be this awkward thing, recognitions and awards.
Recognition and awards, yeah. But it was funny because there were the awards, like the Teaching Excellence Awards, and then there were like travel grants and instructional research. Well, they were called awards, but really they're grants. So Tom Pusateri came up with the idea, like, hey, let's call it Grants and Awards.
Yeah, but the hard part is you have to go through and do a constitutional amendment to change something like that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you did, yeah. So you are the Vice President of Grants and Awards. Mm-hmm. And so what does that mean, really?
Well, I've only done it for a year. So, because I was involved with the Partnership Small Grants first, which is how I got involved in STP. And that was thanks to Beth Schwartz encouraging me to go to the Get Involved, and that's what was there. And so I did that for several years. And then Amy Feinberg was Vice President of Recognition and Awards, and then she was elected to President-elect. And so they needed a one-year appointment. And so that was what the year I just did, was an appointed position. Mm-hmm. But you agreed to run. So I think I'm just going to begin my first 3-year term through that election.
So you agreed to run.
I did.
And you won the election.
I did. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
so your very own first 3-year term starts this coming January 1, 2020.
Yes.
And by the time this is released, that will be in the past. Mm-hmm. So congratulations on just starting your term in the past. Because we're playing the time travel game.
And to bring this back, I've only been doing it for a year, and so I'm still learning. Like, what is this role? I'm still kind of learning it.
Well, and I think the thing is, good. I think you have a chance to invent it for yourself. Mm-hmm. And so obviously you have some constitutional responsibilities, which of course you will follow, and you have a great team on the executive committee. But then you should look at it and make it your own and be creative. And we're blessed that STP has a robust budget, and you should think about what new places do you want to take, grants and awards.
Well, it's fun because when I stepped into the role, I think we had 7 committees for grants and awards, and then 2 new awards were developed that year under was that under Rick? It must have been under Sue. And then this year we developed 2 more, the civic engagement and the mentorship of teachers, and those are getting underway.
Right.
So I think we're up to like 11 different committees now that are granting awards and recognitions and things like that. So it does seem like it's expanding, and there's a lot more. There's a lot more ways for people to get involved, but people are not always applying for some of the things. So we have money and awards that are going unused.
Well, and that's a good problem and a solvable problem.
I think we just need to get the word out and encourage people to apply. Yeah,
absolutely. So Keli, looking at the crystal ball, what do you want to share anything about what you're thinking about for the future? Do you have, other than starting up some solo research that we're going to start talking about, do you have, so you're happy at William Jewell, you're going to be chair for a while, it sounds like. Do you have some goals in the future you want to share?
Professional at the college.
Yeah. Or just in your career-wise, STP or Psychi or on the horizon or whatever.
This past year, I felt like I was going pretty strong, and I took on a lot of responsibilities, and I was a little bit overwhelmed. I was doing some stuff for the college. I oversaw a task force, and we developed the Honors Institute in Critical Thinking for the college.
Okay.
And I was on faculty council, and we were doing stuff on the culture between faculty and staff and chairing in a department, and I'm the faculty member with the most advisees at our college. So I felt
at the entire college.
At the entire college, yes. So I felt like, and then I got involved in STP, and I'm individually I'm loving everything that I'm doing, but collectively it was a bit much.
Yeah.
So I've started taking a little bit of a step back. I have a lighter teaching load this semester. I'm realizing that I need to be a little bit more strategic in where I'm placing my time. So one semester it might be here, and another semester it might be there. But I need to get back to doing some things for our department. As chair, there's some curriculum revisions that we want to do, and I've been neglecting research. And I mentioned to you I want to get involved in SOTL and some of my own professional development I want to do. Good
for you. And hopefully you can find ways to double dip or even triple dip some of that. So maybe you can combine some of those interests that you have to do for the department with some of the SOTL and maybe even with advising, and try to mend or meld some of those things together so that you're being efficient and effective with that time.
That would be smart.
Yeah. If you can find a way to do that. I can't thank you enough for spending time after a long and good Friday conference day, after spending that time and more time with me. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. I enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you.